Sorry. I got too excited because this is the last like major thing, and you guys are going to be so fascinated. But so why are we doing this, right? Right now it just looks like, oh, I made a smaller surface. Why didn't I make that surface smaller in the first place, right? Right? I don't know. That's what I thought. But the reason we're doing this is because, well, I mean, think about the nature of Grasshopper, right? It's algorithmic. We can do this same operation on every single one of our surfaces, no matter how many there are, at the same time. So if I'm trying to create something like a Louvers system, like you saw before, this guy or that guy, right? As long as it's subdivided properly and you know you kind of do all of your scales of domain functions properly, it's as easy as replacing this the domain thing and then subsurface into wherever you have some of your original surfaces to say be extruded, right? So in order to make this pretty clean, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little button here, like a replacement surface, and I'm going to call this thing, like this one right here. Oh, you know what? I need... Sorry, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to take this and, yeah, I want the domain. Okay, so rather than pull a surface over, what I want to grab is the domain modification. So we can do the same thing as the surface with the wireless and stuff, but you just need to make sure that it follows the right format. And that would be, I think you can do it with that. Oh, that doesn't seem right though. There we go, domain squared. That's the one we want. So there are two domains here. This one is a numerical boundary. This one is a U and V boundary. So that should be able to carry that for us. Let's plug that in and make sure. Looks like we got our domain. If you want to verify, you can probably look at it right here, and it says 0 to 38 and 2 to 4. Make sure that the domain that you're hovering over here says the same thing, 0 to 38, 2 to 4. That's good. And then what I'm going to do is actually disconnect these inputs so that I can use them later. Okay, so this needs to be reparametrized as well. And that's my domain. So this can be applied to my extrusions however you see fit, really. But you just kind of need to know where to place it, okay? So I'll talk through that, but first I want to make sure that this doesn't get all convoluted. So I'm going to make a duplicate of that domain. Well, I mean, theoretically, if you really want to be efficient, you want to name it first. So I'm going to call this Louvers domain. Copy paste, replace that connection, and make it wireless. So I moved a little bit fast here. I'm going to give you a moment to catch up, and then I'm going to whoops, sorry, did that wrong. This one goes wireless. Okay, now all I did was reapply the Reparametrize and added this Louvers domain, which was found under params and primitive. And I do want to give you a quick warning. Something that you might be noticing by now is that my named domain, right, looks exactly the same as the named surface that you see up here, right? They look the same, except they just have different names. You'll need to be diligent in naming these things so that they're appropriate. The good thing is, like, if I hover over it, it tells me it's a surface format. But just visually, it's a good idea to make sure that you call it surface, or call it domain, or call it curve, whatever you have going through. So I just think that's important. Okay, so green flags for me to go on, or you need a moment to catch up? All right, you guys got to catch up. All right, everyone. So let's bring it back in here. We're going to finish up what we're doing. The one thing that I want to caution you on here is this stuff, right? I modified it so that it was non-percentage or proportional based. We need to go back to the percentage ones that I set up, like these. So just delete those if you made them and go back to this. So this is our little, mobile component. We can pull this thing around and put it in where we need to put it in. The thing that you need to know is that once the extrusion is made, it's no longer a surface, it's a poly surface. So if you try to do this function on it, it's going to give you an error after the extrusion. Like if you take the extrusion and you plug it in here, your objective is to take the base surface that created the extrusion and modify that to make it into like a louver system or something like that. So that's what you plug in here, and then you take this surface output and you plug that into the extrude function. So let's do that. I'm going to take this thing and just drag it over here. Yeah, put it here. And I'm thinking that I'm probably going to have to, it's going to get a little crazy, but what I know is that these extrusions are the ones that are going to get plugged in from the S output, right? Because I'm modifying the base surface down to like a pancake, sliver, louver, whatever you want to call it. Then I'm extruding them. So I'm going to take everything from extrude over and give myself some working room. Like that. I can collapse it later if I need to. But all of this action is going to happen in this zone. Okay? So the thing that I'm plugging in is the surface, the base surface. That's this B input. So I go back to where that came from. That's this guy. And I'm going to plug him into subsurf. That's what you see there. So I care a good bit about what this looks like, and right now they're just smaller but still kind of wide, expansive, rectangular forms. I'm going to reduce those and make it a little bit more appropriate. So I need to go back to, trace it all the way back, go all the way back to your origin, right? So this is what I was telling you about before. All of that formative basic information happens back here in the corner, and then all the action and results happen to the right. So this, I'm going to do it based off of a percentage. So my U values are in the vertical direction. So it looks like my U max is at the top. Yours might not be. There's a chance that your U's can be left and right and reversed or upside down, depending on how you built that first surface. So I'm going to define this as my U max being 0.98, so 98% of the way to the top of the surface, like that. My V min and V max, I don't want them to extend all the way. Actually, you know what? I changed my mind. U max I'm going to make 100, so 1.00. V min and V max are both going to be 0.05. That's one side of it. And then 0.95. Okay, that means I have a 5% reduction from the left edge and the right edge going inward. You guys understanding conceptually what's happening? And then finally, I just need to set the U min, so I'll make this 0.9. It's probably too narrow. Well, maybe not. Yeah, I'll leave it at 0.9. That should be okay. So that translates all the way up to this louver domain, right? This louver domain that's going to modify all of these connections for my extrusions. The thing you need to know about this is that just like all of these strings of mini algorithms here, unfortunately, I can't just plug all of my surfaces in and then plug this in to all of my outputs, right? Because at this point, they're separate isolated systems, and if I collapse all that data, it's difficult to restructure differently. Or actually, well, yeah. There are some ways of doing it, but it's probably easier for us to just copy and paste and keep with the tempo here. The difference is I don't need to duplicate louver domain because that's a constant. That will always stay the way it's always going to stay. So, or the way I've always programmed it in the beginning. So this surface input can just reconnect into the B input of that extrusion. And it didn't really show you much here because I have it turned off. That would be these. Turn that on. No. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, turn those on. And you can even turn on your curves too. And you see that modified my first smallest system. And I can just copy and paste this 4 times going down and just replace the surface input and then replace the surface input for the extrude, and you're good to go. So that's going to look like this. Copy, paste, put in the new surface, and then put in the new surface into extrude. That gets modified. Paste again, replace, replace, paste again, and replace, and replace. So now you have your modified louver system. Justin digs it. I got a thumbs up from the back of the room. Thank you, Justin. Okay. So, I'll recap again real quick what we did for the domain exercise, but this one's we're gonna have to jump back and forth, okay? So back in the beginning, we created a domain reduction function. That's this. In our previous exercise, we applied it to the main surface, but instead, this time, we isolated the main surface and we just kept the modifier. This is nothing but modification data. There's no geometry here. It's just, what am I doing to something? Okay. Then we went over here. We gave ourselves some working room. We pulled our extrusions over, and we replaced the reparametrized isotrim in between the base surface of the extrusions and the extrusions themselves. That's it. That's all we did. That's all it took. A lot of words, not too much work, right? Yeah, well, it'll get far easier over time. Okay, what questions do you have? Yeah, well, I'll come troubleshoot. That is the end of our tutorials for today. Okay, so bear in mind that as we approach next week, we're going to mostly be functioning in domain territory. We're going to look at what happens when you start to get a little bit recursive with your systems, meaning you have full domain, you have subdivided domains, you reduce the domains, you offset domains, you reconstruct layered systems with domains. It's going to get really crazy and really fun, I think.